Hello, I'm Laura Knights, CEO of Knights Consulting, creator of blackwomanleading.com, and the host of Black Woman Leading, the podcast. This podcast amplifies the needs and experiences of Black women leaders in the workplace with a holistic focus on three core areas: leadership development, mental wellness, and relationship management. Our ultimate aim is to help Black women learn, heal, and grow in their leadership capacity. Before we jump into this next podcast episode, I wanted to invite you to the 2025 Black Woman Leading Live Conference and Retreat, taking place May 27th through the 30th, 2025 in Virginia Beach. Now, if you haven't heard, Black Woman Leading Live is the premier leadership development conference to help Black women professionals learn, heal, and grow in their leadership capacity. Imagine a community of Black women leaders from across the country supporting you as you clarify your career growth strategy, work on refining your leadership skills, and make a plan to tend to your mental health and self-care. Yes, we do all of that at this transformational, professional, and personal development experience designed by Black women for Black women. Now, activities will include workshops, panels, wellness breaks, laser coaching, networking, action planning, and some fun community events. And at the 2025 event, in addition to our overall focus on your career development and holistic wellness, we'll dive a little bit deeper into the critical leadership competency of strategic communication. Every effective leader has gained some mastery of strategic communication, and we want to help you to do the same. So, yes, we're going to get into all of this. And sis, you need to be there. Get all the details and save your seat at www.bwlretreat.com. All right, welcome everyone. Happy to be in another podcast episode today with our special guest, Shayla Atkins, and we're talking about leading with authenticity. Shayla, welcome to the Black Woman Leading Podcast. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
Yay. Well, we're going to jump into this conversation about leading with authenticity. But first, let me give you all the official about Shayla. Shayla N. Atkins has a proven track record in the private sector, earning her the coveted title of award-winning DE&I leader as her team was awarded the Most Innovative DE&I Team. Her thought leadership, results, and commitment to community service earned her the 2022 Lifetime Presidential Achievement Award, presented by President Joseph R. Biden, and now as a CEO of a consulting firm, a certified Lean Six Sigma Black Belt, executive coach, and organizational effectiveness strategist, making a global impact. She challenges the norms, systems, and practices in the corporate landscape to level the playing field for every person and business to thrive. She is the best-selling author of Black Women Lead with Spice, and we're going to talk about that today, underscoring her belief that authenticity is the new leadership currency. Shayla strives to change the leadership landscape by advancing authentic and effective women into senior leadership through her talks, development programs, courses, and books. She not only boasts an education in organizational effectiveness and a myriad of certifications, but she has also nearly 2 decades of real-world global senior HR leadership experience and emerged as an award-winning authority in leadership development, diversity, equity and inclusion, and workplace culture transformation in leading mid-sized and large companies. So y'all already know our guests come with the receipts, honey, okay? So we have a bona fide expert in the house to discuss this topic. And Shayla and I, how have we met? Shayla, really through LinkedIn, connected through LinkedIn and had a couple of talks. And I'm like, hey, girl, hey, you doing your thing? And she like, hey, girl, hey, you doing your thing? And so have just been kind of supportive through the LinkedIn kind of sphere and seeing ways that we could support and collaborate with each other. So really happy to have you and to have this dialogue today.
Me too. I'm really excited to be here. And yes, LinkedIn just bringing the people together, bringing
Yes,
that community.
bringing the people together. If y'all are not on LinkedIn, You need to get on LinkedIn. You need to
Yeah.
create your profile and get on LinkedIn. All right, so we're going to jump into this topic of leading with authenticity. But before that, my kind of starting question that I ask all of our guests is, what does the phrase Black woman leading mean to you? And can you share a little bit about just your journey as a Black woman leading that's led you to this work today?
Ooh, that's an amazing question. Black woman leading, I think one is it's layered, it's multifaceted. And I think about what that means in our personal lives as
Mhm.
far as us leading, whether that's leading our families, leading professionally in the workplace. And Black women leading means to me that for me, it's being authentic and effective. And
Mm.
so my journey, and I share this often, this story about the professional world. And I actually started my career in supply chain. And
Mm.
so that's where the Lean Six Sigma background comes. And I remember having this pivotal meeting with a key leader, and I knew I was waiting on my promotion, and I've been saving the company millions of dollars, and he said, "You're amazing. You're delivering these results, and you just don't have the intangibles."
Mm. Wow.
And this was some decades ago. He said, and 21-year-old, 22-year-old me asking, what are the intangibles? He said, the image, the look, the
Wow.
executive presence. And that one conversation, unfortunately and fortunately, was the catalyst to almost a decade of code switching,
Mm.
covering, conforming, so I can climb the corporate ladder and have this executive presence. And my journey is the thing, what was conflicting for me was that it was working until it wasn't working.
Mm.
So for a while it worked. I was climbing the ladder. And when I got into middle management is when I had my plateau. I could no longer keep up the facade.
Yeah.
Fake it till you make it. I rated 0 stars. Do not recommend. Do not try it. It is not a sustainable career strategy.
No.
Don't do it. And hit that middle management, hit that plateau. My performance started to become roller coaster. I could not maintain the facade.
Mm.
I had my daughters, and I went out maternity leave for a while. And something about having the children,
Changes
and
that
they just
landscape and that perspective, right?
a perspective.
Yes.
And I'm telling them to be bold, go change the world, be yourself. And I'm sitting there looking at myself in the mirror like, ma'am, do you even know who you are at this point? You have code switched for so long. Do you even know who you are?
Wow.
And so that was the plateau. And it wasn't until when I came back, you have these revelations and these epiphany, right? These turning points. And I came back, I had, my hair shaved and was confident, no longer shrinking myself,
Mm.
no longer with that imposter syndrome caused by suppression and oppression. Um, and I showed up, and I remember a board meeting I had to request, millions of dollars for a talent acquisition strategy. And again, that confidence, the clarity, the succinctness in communication effectiveness. And I remember the board member saying, there she is.
Mm. A new woman.
They said, we've been waiting for her.
Wow.
And and then my career took off. I no longer had to choose between authenticity and effectiveness because I was effective, but I wasn't authentic. And
Mm.
oftentimes I think that we as Black women, when we lead, we feel like we have to sacrifice one for the other. We have to choose
Yeah.
one for the other. So that's the short story of the long story.
Ooh, but I mean, it's powerful because I think there is that tension, right? There have been
Mhm.
some people in spaces, like you said, it was effective. It was working for a while, right? So
Yeah.
there is this kind of counter narrative that is
Exactly.
showing up that feels like it could be accurate because we're doing all of the masking and getting maybe results, but it's, I guess, what's your definition of effective? Because if you falling apart behind the scenes, then is it really
Exactly.
effective, right?
Is
Right.
it really effective when your mental well-being is in jeopardy, your
Yeah.
physical well-being, right? The potential for burnout.
Yeah.
So yeah, to your point, what is your definition of effective,
Yeah.
right? So absolutely.
Yeah, and that in some of these spaces, it sounds like you went and had your babies and had that mountaintop mommy experience and got this clarity on your identity. And so then when you came back, although the space was the same, you were different. The lens through which you were looking at it was different. So sometimes the tension is not because you are wrong, it's because you're in the wrong space, right? Or you're in the wrong, you know what I mean? Like you might have to leave the
Exactly.
space to show up right too.
And here's the thing, I love when you said around Black women healing, learning,
Yeah.
and growing. One part of that story was a lot of healing.
Yes.
There's a lot of therapy during that, right? And really getting to know me, right? Not who was defined for me.
Yes.
And so not only uncovering my leadership identity, but also my personal identity.
Yes.
So then I could show up as an authentic and effective leader. So there was a lot of healing in that journey, which I
Yeah.
think is so important for Black women. Um, and I always, I talk about imposter syndrome. I study imposter syndrome. And one of the misconceptions is that it's about us, right? When in fact, it is about the oppression, suppression,
Hello. Yes.
narcissism that we have endured. And that becomes a coping mechanism.
Yes.
It is not because of us.
Yes.
And so that it takes a lot of healing in order to, and I love that you do that work because it's so imperative in order to show up in leadership.
Yeah, and we talk about it in the Black Woman Leading as your come from. So what is this like
Mhm.
internal, emotional,
That origin
psychological
story,
space,
yes,
right? That
yes,
like is showing up in a way at work, but it's probably showing up that way in other parts of your life. You talked about your personal identity too. So doing that healing work on your come from then allows you to come from a different place, from a place of
exactly,
abundance instead of lack, from a place of power instead of fear, that kind of thing.
exactly,
So yeah, I love
exactly.
that. I love it. I love
Yes,
it.
yes,
Oh, okay, okay, okay. We can talk about this
I
all
know,
day. Now
right?
let's we broken into this authenticity, and I mentioned it in your bio. I saw it on your website too. Authenticity being the new leadership
Right?
currency. Share a little
Mhm.
bit more about what that means.
Yeah, so I think, you've been in the leadership development space. And during that time, as it evolves, there's always a buzzword, there's
Mhm.
always a trend in this space. But one of the things, what I find is kind of this underpin of all of these, whether we talk about empathy, emotional intelligence, any other skill, there is an underpin and need for authenticity for
Yeah.
that as the foundation. And the authenticity, there's always a misconception about authenticity, as in, how real can I be?
Yes.
And when in fact, authenticity is about alignment.
Wait a
And
minute.
it
Say
is
that. Wait. Say that again. Say that again.
authenticity is not about how real you can be, it is about how aligned you are.
That's good.
Are you living, operating, and leading in alignment? And in our gut, innately, we know when we are misaligned. We feel it. Things aren't working,
Yes.
right? There is no ease and flow, our creativity, our mental capacity. We know when we are not aligned. When you are realigned, when you are aligned, that isn't where you're coming from your most authentic place.
Yes.
Your cognitive ability increases, right? We're not forcing it, we're not overcompensating. And so, authenticity being the new leadership currency in this new way of working and the future of work requires us as leaders to be empathetic, compassionate, human centered, leading the entire person. No more can we lead just the compartmentalized
Yeah, the
employee.
technical person, right?
The tech, right? So we can't lead this compartmentalized version of people. We're required to lead the entire person. And in order to do that, we have to become more aligned or authentic with who we are so we can build those meaningful connections. Especially in remote work environments, we have to build those connections. We've seen that heavily after the pandemic. We're seeing that with new generations entering the workforce with that requirement. So that's what I mean when I say authenticity is the new leadership currency. If you want to build, lead diverse, high performing teams, get aligned into your authenticity as the foundational skill that you can build upon your emotional intelligence, psychological safety, empathy, and every other leadership skill that's needed. So
Yeah.
that's what it's the new currency
Yeah,
that's
I
needed.
love this. I love the clarity around this, right? Because I feel that oftentimes there's been this misconception, as you said, that authenticity is I'm bringing my whole self, and I would not. I would advise against it because work don't deserve
100.
your whole self
It does not deserve your whole self, nor should you feel compelled
to
or
do that.
forced
Yes,
to do that, right?
yes,
Because the environments in which we work in may not be conducive
or safe,
for
right?
or
Yeah.
safe for you to bring your entire self. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so then this clarity around authenticity being aligned, and again, back to the language we use of Black woman leading is kind of having a aligned come from or misaligned, right?
Mhm.
Are you able to operate within your value system? Are you very
Exactly.
clear on the value that you add? And you've done your healing work so that there is not projection and all of this from your past trauma showing up in the workplace and all of that
That's it.
kind of stuff.
That's
Yeah,
exactly
that's
it,
good.
right? And when you get clear on your values and belief system, I
Yes.
tell you, one of the things my mentor told me, well, he was my sponsor, my C suite sponsor. The alignment for me, I always say, it forces you to be consistent and it forces you, and it holds yourself accountable,
Hmm.
right? And what he told me was that when I was clear on my value and beliefs, I can clearly articulate it. He said, now that I know what you stand for, I can trust you to lead an entire organization.
Wow. Wow.
People do not promote who they don't know, nor do they promote who they can't trust.
Yeah.
Now that I know the real you and I know what you stand for, your beliefs are not they do not waver depending on the room that you're in.
Yes.
I can trust you to lead this entire organization.
Yeah, I love that. And it's powerful because there's this two-part piece of this that I'm taking away from this discussion, right? There's this inner work, what we call your heart work if you've been following
Mhm.
Black Woman Leading. There's this inner work of really getting aligned on your values, your contribution, what are the non-negotiables for you, and how do you show up
Absolutely.
and contribute in the world, right? It's that. But then there's this other piece around visibility and your ability to share that thing, right? So you did the work. You were away with your babies, taking care of yourself, seeing your therapist and all of that. But then when you came back to the space, you had to show and demonstrate some things, both probably in your spoken word and in your behavior that would then reveal that. And so there's a two part,
That
internal,
is
and
the
then we
key
got
part.
to show it too.
And that's exactly what we do at the Atkins
Yeah.
Impact. Our coaching develops the individual, right? And as consultants, we work on at the organizational
Yes.
level for that very reason.
Yeah.
And being able to clearly articulate, which we'll talk about spice because that's a part of
Yes.
spice,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
The C is the communication. Can you clearly articulate that value proposition, the value you bring in your personal values?
Yeah.
And they do not waver depending on the room that you're in.
Yep. Yep.
And a lot of leaders, C suite, are looking for that consistency. They're when you change and you waver because we think we have defined our leadership identity based off of others' perception,
Yeah.
others' requests. We think that's we're the team player.
Yep.
We think we're going with the flow when in fact it is the unwavering values and beliefs that builds trust. It
Yeah.
builds credibility
Yeah.
within the organization.
And that's the shape shifting. We want to we want to stay away from being the shape
I love that.
shifting.
I love that. Yes.
But I want to call out too, because there is some grace here, right? I want to call out the
Mhm.
point you made earlier around the imposter syndrome, because some of the things, that's why the healing work and being able to have mirrors, which we'll talk about in a little bit, is really important.
Mm,
Because a lot of, if we are operating in that space where we're feeling the need to shape shift, right? Some of that is our own stuff we need to deal with, but some of that is systemic in nature, right? And thinking about
absolutely.
forms of trauma, oppression, and other isms that we've had to
Mhm.
endure that have sometimes then been internalized oppression, oppression turned inward.
Exactly.
So it's some work we do, but we do also have to realize that we're operating in systems that are sometimes not set up for us to succeed, and we have to kind of use our own agency to navigate those systems as well.
Absolutely. You're exactly right. And so that is why when I started working with women, and that's kind of really the evolution of the consulting firm,
Hmm.
I was working with women, developing women, and unintentionally it became this let me fix the woman.
Mm.
And yet we were working with women, developing women, and sending them back into environments that were still, right, toxic,
Toxic.
unsafe psychologically. And so that is really kind of how we evolved. I can no longer in good conscience develop the individual and send them back into an organization that is not prepared and ready
Yes.
for that individual, especially their direct leadership.
Yep.
And so our programs now, when we go inside of organizations, we no longer just work with the individuals. We require leadership, their direct leadership participation into the programs, because again, there has to be knowledge on how to lead
Yep.
diverse women. What
Yep.
does that mean? What are those trigger points? What are the cultural awareness, right, and intelligence that's needed to do that? The support, the advocacy.
Yep.
So you're spot on. There is the systemic aspect, and there is grace. I tell, give yourself grace. That
Yeah.
imposter syndrome. We have dealt with narcissism, like you said, suppression, oppression, every other ism and
Yes.
essence, and it's become our armor. It becomes a coping mechanism, for us to just make it and just survive. And we
Yeah.
want to move women into not just surviving, but thriving.
Yes. And there's a lot of resonance there. That's been our experience too with doing the work with Black Women Leading, but then also doing this consulting work in organizations. I once had an executive tell me straight to my face, and we had a real interesting conversation. An executive sponsor, they had Black Women Leading has been going for 4 years. In the first 3 years of the program, they had at least one or two people that they were sponsoring every cohort. And what was happening of those one or two people, 50% of them left the organization after they
Oh
finished,
my goodness.
and shortly after they finished Black Woman Leading. And I had the conversation with the executive and following up and them seeing the value because they were seeing these leaders show up differently. But she said, I want you to know that we've had conversation that we know that when we are investing in your program, that we could be investing in people to leave. And we had some conversation about, well, what is that about? It's about the work in the organization or at that manager level, because it was a multi-tier, very large organization that they're coming, but they've gotten to come from clear over here. Okay. They've gotten a clear vision. Those values are on point, and they're coming back and they're advocating and they're trying to collaborate from this new, renewed viewpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And the organization had not been at the same speed doing their own work.
Exactly.
And so it's a consistent thing. We see it, and it's also why we see some of the highest attrition rates with senior level Black
Mm-hmm.
women, because they're doing their work and realizing I got options. And
And
if
I,
y'all, I got options, and if y'all ain't
yeah,
talking about nothing, I'm gonna have to move
have
around.
to move on,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yes,
Okay, let's
I
talk
love
about
that.
this spice. So your book, Women Lead with Spice, and y'all get the book.
Get the
What was your inspiration for writing the book first, and then break us down on what the spice is?
ice, yes. So the inspiration, one, personally came from the story I shared, being told that you don't have the intangibles. Although I was delivering all the results, I was the expert.
Yep.
And again, that revelation, I've had some amazing mentors and sponsors during my corporate career. And so that was that personal inspiration. Professionally, I was the best kept secret.
Mm,
So even though I am a speaker and author, I'm naturally introverted. So I became comfortable being behind the scenes and again climbing that corporate ladder. But you cannot break through that middle management ceiling being the best kept secret,
yeah.
right? Your influence, your communication style becomes so much more, your image, right, becomes so much more important. And so I've had some amazing sponsors, and there's a model out there called the PIE,
Hmm.
PIE, performance, image, and exposure, that was created by a gentleman. It's a phenomenal model. However, what I noticed that the model was not created for us. There was some missing key components. Whether you are a woman, woman of color, black woman, it was not created for
Hmm.
marginalized groups.
Yeah.
Again, phenomenal foundation of a model. And Spice plays on that, right? Black women, we have an edge. We have a
Yes.
spice. Like,
Okay.
let's use it to
Yes.
our advantage. But also, Spice are the 5 key skills that we teach in our programs around what Black women need in order to effectively climb the ladder.
Okay.
And what we're finding, and it's not just for Black women, all women are resonating with these
Got
skills.
it.
And so S is your savvy. So that's your business savvy, the business acumen. When we think about us being experts, where we hone in on our craft, what we have found and what we've seen, we do not know how to tie our expertise into the bottom line.
Yes.
Do we know how we make our organizations money?
Yep.
Do we have the business savvy and the business acumen to understand market demands, ROIs, ROEs, you name it,
Yep.
right? P is your performance. We have no problem in this area. We
Yeah.
perform,
Yes.
but it's a different type of performance. It's intentional performance. Are you selecting roles that contribute to the bottom line? When you volunteer for extra work, is it just for busy work and tasks to show that you have capacity, or are they for strategic
Strategic. Yes.
thought leadership, strategic work? It's intentional performance.
Yes.
The I is your image. This is where we pull in the authentic image. This is your personal brand. What do you want to be known for when you are not in the room? What is being said?
Yes.
We talked about those unwavering beliefs and values, really having that authentic personal brand. C is that communication, that advocacy, those negotiation skills that we are not taught. I can know from personal experience, it was be grateful you got a job, be grateful what those people gave you. That was my upbringing and my origin story around
Yep.
salary,
Yep.
benefits, negotiations.
Yep.
Was not taught to negotiate. So how do we advocate for ourselves? And last but not least is E, which is exposure. And this is two-pronged, exposing the real us. And I always say, let your guard down just a little bit, not all the way. Not bring your full self, but just a little bit.
Just a
Let
little
people
touch.
in a little bit. You are amazing. Let people see that, right?
Yes.
And I always, are you sending your representative to the meeting? Like, who is showing up? Just let your guard down, just a little bit.
The
And then also
so
exposure
good.
being and also exposure being your network. Are you exposing yourself, right? So are you building those strategic networks, those mutually beneficial relationships? So those, your savvy, your performance, your image, your communication, and your exposure. That is leading with spice.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And
Yeah.
and we talked about, and I think you gave us some clarity on this when you clarified authenticity being about alignment, not about necessarily needing to give your whole self. But
Yeah.
you may have some people listening that's like, okay, this is resonating with me cognitively. I'm understanding the value of
Mhm.
this can add to my career journey. What would you give? What's some kind of tactical or practical advice you would give of how we begin to kind of pull these pieces down to start demonstrating them, to start letting them be more visible? What are some of those practical kind of strategies we can put in place?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost is, and you said it, it's the clarity on yourself.
Yeah.
You have to get to know you And there's some work, there's exercise, there's things that you can do. One, establishing your clear personal identity,
Yeah.
coupled with a leadership identity. What is your leadership style? I know for me, before I used to resort to masculine leadership styles to
Mm-hmm.
prove my effectiveness, but that was actually not how I lead and actually not how I show up and thrive. The next thing I would definitely recommend is once you get clarity on who you are as a leader, begin to cultivate environments around you in which you show up and thrive. So put the parameters, put the boundaries in place. And I'll give an example of that. What I mean by that. Again, I said I'm an introvert, but I'm also a processor.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm in a meeting and it's Shayla, what are your thoughts? Can you weigh in? I'm going to create the environment where I know I can show up my best. And so what I say is, actually, I'll let the conversation mature a little bit and then I weigh in.
Okay. Okay.
I'm going to create the environment. I'm going to set up the space around me to where I know I can show up most authentic, meaning aligned with who I
Yeah.
am and the best. And so for me to show up as the best, give me 5 more minutes to process.
And then I got
I'll let
you.
the
Yeah.
conversation mature, and then I'm going to weigh in and I'm going to show up and give you the best answer you've ever received,
Exactly.
right? So it's but we have to have that clarity on who we are and
Yeah.
what our leadership styles are, right? So those are some of the ways. And I always say, build your network. Tactically, just build your network. Get your coaches, your sponsors, your champions. You mentioned your mirrors. I believe there are people in our lives that mirror, like we need
Yes.
some reflective and some reflection, right? And be open to receive the feedback,
Yes.
right? When you do that healing work, being open to receive feedback, be open to receiving, constructive criticism. So I would definitely, those would be my
I love
kind of
that.
top three, first three, if you will.
Yeah, and I love that idea when you said setting up. It's you, but again, you had to do that come from work first, but then you really driving the narrative of what does an
Absolutely.
environment of success look like for you, and feeling that's really a place of power, right?
It
To
is.
say,
It's
yeah,
courage.
I'm gonna give you something, but this is what works for me to give it, and let me kind of set that up. And you can language that and message that in a way that's appropriate, of course, but
Exactly.
it's definitely coming from a place of power and a
It
place of
is.
being able to drive the narrative of what you need to be successful.
Exactly. It puts you back into control. You're exactly right. It puts you
Mhm.
back into control. You control your narrative, right? You play with depending on your organizational culture, you play with the language and what that looks like.
Yeah.
For me, it is I'll let the conversation mature.
Yeah.
Again, or depending on my audience, I'll just keep playing on that example, or provide me some additional context,
Yeah.
right, before weighing in. But I know in order for me to show up and thrive and to stand out, to give very, thoughtful response, that's what I need,
Yeah.
right? So I'm aware of that. So that level of self awareness has to be high
Yeah. Yeah. I
in
love
order to
that.
break through that middle management
Yeah,
ceiling.
that's great. That's great. You started talking about kind of building your network. I want to kind of take us to our season's theme, of course, of community care is
Yeah.
critical. And so, thinking about that, right? Your network may not necessarily be your community, but your community should be a part of your network for sure. So,
Absolutely. I love that. I love
yeah,
that.
when you think about that, what role does community play in our ability to show up authentically as leaders?
Full transparency, this was the one skill I struggled with the most early on.
Mhm.
Because again, I said I'm an introvert. So this was the one I'm like, wait, you want me to go outside and people? I gotta talk to people, please. I'm horrible at chit chat. I enjoy thoughtful, deep, meaningful
Yeah.
conversation. So, it's going to networking events, and after asking, "Hi, what's your name? What do you do?" I've got nothing.
You like, I
I,
don't.
I've got
I'm
nothing.
glazed over at this point, okay?
Glazed over. I cannot chit chat. It's horrible. But what I love what you said around your network doesn't have to necessarily be your community. And when you're building your network, you're strategic, you're intentional, and it's a very methodical approach. And so, again, when you're looking for your champions, are they strategically placed across the organization and not just within your direct chain of command?
Yeah.
When you're looking for your sponsors, same. And when you're looking for mentors, do they reflect the skills in which you want to grow in? Right? Oftentimes we go with who I'll just say who we're comfortable with,
Yep.
right? But are we finding mentors who possess the skills that we probably need to just work on and brush off?
Yep.
So to challenge you, right, to think different, give you a different lens and perspective.
Yeah.
And then your community, I would say for me, what that means is that's my personal board of directors.
Yes.
I have counsel. Like I go to people for counsel. I go to people for guidance. I go to people to cry on their shoulder. And they each play a different role,
Yeah.
right? But in order for me to show up, if I'm going to show up and speak on a stage, speak at a conference, deliver training, my personal board of directors is a part of that community.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes there's a challenge when asking for help, asking for support,
Yep.
right? And so I tell people it takes a lot of people around me to keep this together.
Okay.
Look, to keep this machine going, it
Yes.
takes a lot of people right around. So, and I'm all for it.
Yeah.
For doing that. Yeah.
And you know, sometimes that difficulty in asking for help is for a few things. Sometimes
Mm.
it is pride, and
Yes.
we gotta kind of check ourselves of
Yes.
having to be the superwoman. But sometimes it's because we have put ourselves out there and gotten hurt or gotten
Mm-mm.
rejected or you know, thrown under the bus. And back to that healing thing, you know, I've worked with a lot of Black women in particular, other people too, but Black women in particular, who have experienced some form of workplace trauma, and now they're
Yeah.
in a new space that's a healthier space, but they are still on guard from the stuff in the last situation
Yes.
and not even
Yes.
realizing that, you know, when you put up the walls to protect yourself, you also are keeping opportunities and things out at the same time. So there, I want to throw that out there, you know, because there are people that's listening and might be like, yeah, that sounds good. It's some nuance and some work and some context,
It is.
but sometimes it's like, okay, I need to check myself because I need to be able to ask for help. This is a pride thing. But other times it's a hurt thing, and I need to
It's a
kind of
hard
be
thing.
restored because of harm has been done as well.
And that's what, you know what, you bring up a really good point. And that's where I would say lean into that.
Yeah,
Lean into the discomfort and allow the discomfort to ask the right questions, ask open ended questions, be vulnerable in sharing your experience in the past. And though that activates that vulnerability
yeah,
trust loop,
yeah,
being vulnerable, you start to build trust and rapport with, your mentor, sponsor, whoever that may be, and sharing what your past experience has been.
yeah,
Again, that's what I mean. Just let the guard down just a little bit, right? To allow people to get to know all of you, not just the employee.
yeah.
And that's where you start to build those key relationships. And from a career perspective, that is when your career takes off.
Absolutely,
It's
absolutely.
not a lot about the performance, and we talk about this in the program, the percentage of the pie, the performance. Once you get past senior leadership, the performance shrinks,
Yeah,
right? As far as the major component that propels your career trajectory, it starts to reduce because it's about your influence.
yeah. At that
It's
point,
about your
yeah.
relationships. And we just want to go, I've been taught this. Keep your head down,
Do the
do a good
work. Keep your
job,
head down.
do
Do
the
the work.
work,
People will
you'll get
notice.
noticed.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
Okay, so it wasn't just me.
No, no, no. We talk about that so much in Black Woman Leading. And you all, I just want to be clear too. You know, as Shayla and I are talking, this doesn't mean that you suspend your wisdom either, right? Because
That part.
you need to, you got to, there is a sense of vulnerability, but there is also some wisdom and judgment you have to say that space right there is not safe. That space right there, or that individual right there is not who I'm going to necessarily do the building with, because your discretion and your judgment tells you that. So this letting the guard down and being open that we're talking about does not suspend your wisdom and judgment either. The two
Absolutely.
can both coexist.
They can't. They're not mutually exclusive. Look, we could talk about this all day. Let me tell you, when you get into alignment,
Yes.
your discernment increases
Yes.
because you are very clear on who you are, what you stand for, the environment in which you want to lead and operate. And so your discernment, because again, right, you're not in confusion, you're not
Yep.
moving out from a place of fear. Your discernment increases, that self awareness, it skyrockets.
Yes.
And no, we do not want you to suspend that at
Yep.
all,
Yep.
right? But I always say you have to let the guard down in order to let that discernment flow through. So you can gauge and go, you know what? You're right. This is not the right environment. This is not the right person for me because it's not in
It's
alignment
not in alignment. That's at the
with my
core.
values and beliefs. Once you get that alignment, it guides you, becomes a compass, your North Star.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. I've said it on the podcast too. When I was in high school, one of the mentors, my assistant principal, Karen Fulton, I remember her. We were in an assembly, and I have held on to this. I've told it to Black women leading. I've said it in speaking engagements. I tell my children. She said, "You are a thermostat, not a thermometer." And she talked about and it's this alignment piece that once you have really done that hard work and you realize that, baby, I'm set at 75 degrees. And so when I come into these different environments, because I'm so clear on my setting, I'm so clear on my value, that when I come into those spaces, if they too cold, they're gonna have to warm up to engage with me, and if they too hot, they're gonna have to cool down, because I'm clear on this lane where I'm operating. And that thing is so powerful. It'll keep you from being responsive. I mean, to just being reactive. It'll keep you from violating your own boundaries. It'll keep you from staying too long in a place where that is not safe and that you are not welcome. It will clarify
Yeah,
so many things for you. It
so many
will.
things. It
Yes.
will. I love that.
Ooh,
Say that
I
quote
am
again.
a thermostat, not a thermometer.
Okay. I love that. That is so powerful.
Good. Oh, this is good stuff. Okay. So
Yeah.
let's start to transition a little bit to some of these questions around our theme around community care is critical, because we've been talking about it.
Mhm.
And we've mentioned this concept of mirrors, and I'll share kind of how we talk about it in Black Woman Leading. Because back to that point where I mentioned your network is not always your community, right?
Mhm.
But your community should be part of that network, right? And that's that strategic development. But in your community, the place where you can get the support. Shayla talked about some of those different representatives in your community, your personal board of directors, right? We talk about as mirrors, so that when we are in connection with each other, because we can be in contact but not connected, right? When we
Mhm.
are in connection with each other, there is some resonance there.
Mhm.
And I'm doing my work, my growth work, my healing work, my stretch work as a leader, and you are doing your work. That then we become mirrors for each other. That you're seeing you do your work that enables me and is a catalyst for me. But likewise, sometimes you look in the mirror, it ain't you don't like what you see. And so that reflection back might also convict you and cause you to do some things differently. So in thinking about this concept of mirrors, who are some of your mirrors that have
Mhm.
supported your career growth, your personal development on your journey?
I love that concept, right? And the mirror is interesting because I think that the reflection changes at every
Mm.
stage of growth. And so I've had some mirrors where, depending on in my early stages, reflected back again what I did not like, and I used it as comparison
Mm.
versus reflection and inspiration
Wow.
in my early stages. Now I would say I never met her, but she may not know that she's a mirror of mine. Is Carolyn Wenger, the CEO
Love
of
her.
S6E3.
Love her.
When
Powerful.
you powerful, authentic, um, our program is actually called Leadership Redefined. She embodies a redefined leadership.
Mm.
She redefines the standard status quo image of a CEO.
Yeah.
When we think of CEOs, when we think of an executive presence, that is an 80-year-old term. And yet we still hold leaders to an 80-year-old standard and have not modernized
Wow.
leadership. She has broken through that standard and succeeded. She is a mirror. She inspires me daily. Anytime that I shrink back, my imposter syndrome, I call her my roommate who tries to show up and move in. And she knocks on the door sometimes. Sometimes I open the door and then I'll look at her, but I don't let her in though. Because I'm like, no, you trying to show up. But
Yeah.
that's okay. I'm gonna close the door. But
Yeah.
she comes, she
Yeah.
knocks on the door. Sometimes I even open the door. But I don't let her in. We can't let her in. She be trying to look. She tries to move in, don't want to pay rent. She want to stay on the
Okay.
couch.
It's a pest.
It's just horrible. Another mirror was a mentor I had early on. And she was in the same space around diversity and inclusion, and she really challenged me. She was the mentor who would ask me, who knows the real you?
Mm.
You know, she's the one who gave me what I needed, not what I wanted. And that reflection that I saw was like, okay, it's a coming from a place of love. She's in the space I want to be in. She's a businesswoman on a thriving consulting firm, and so she was a mirror.
Yeah.
Her name is Dr. Vanessa Weaver. She's amazing. I have my business besties who are my mirrors. When some of those days we are just, even the most powerful women, we have our moments,
Yes, we
right?
do. Yes, we
Where
do.
I'm like, oh no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it.
Yes.
And they hold up the mirror and have to remind me of my own reflection.
Yes.
They have to remind me, do you know who you are?
Yes.
Like, look at what you have. Are you serious? And sometimes I'm like, okay, you right. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. Thank you.
Thank you. I just need a little shaking right
I
there
just,
real quick.
all right, I had to take that off. Thank you so much. I'm back. I'm
Yes.
back.
Yes.
But I always say, allow yourself to have those moments, right? It's the human side of you, which is
Yes.
great. It keeps you hungry. It keeps you going. Allow yourself to have those moments so that you can bend but don't break.
Mm-hmm.
Allow yourself to bend. Have those moments where you have people in your community who's going to push you. There's not a bone of jealousy or envy
Yes.
in them, right? And they can challenge you. They can remind you who you are. Now that's your community,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
But allow yourself to have those moments where you bend, because again, leadership will require you to bend, but allow yourself to bend so you don't break.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love that. Oh, okay. We could talk about this all day. I want
I
to
know,
ask
right?
you one or two more questions on our core
Yeah,
theme, but before that, I want to just kind of bring our leading with authenticity kind of to a closure point. It's so
yeah.
much to unpack here, but I just want
Thank
to
you.
see any final thoughts you have on this topic in particular before we kind of shift to our final questions.
My final thoughts around authenticity is to start, as we've said before, that inner work,
Yeah.
that healing, that clarity and alignment. Work on yourself so that you can show up, cultivate that environment in which you thrive in, and no longer should you have to choose between authenticity and effectiveness, because the two can coexist
Yes.
and they should coexist.
Yes.
So that would be,
I love it. I
yeah,
love it. That alignment piece is,
that
ooh,
alignment.
that's some clarity, honey. That's some clarity on this
It
authenticity thing.
It is. It's such a buzzword that
Yeah.
is thrown around, right? And I cringe, and I'm like,
That's not it.
that's not it. Because look, does that mean we're going to show up to work in our pajamas and how real? No, it is about your alignment.
Yes.
And when you have that clarity within yourself, that is coming from the place of power.
Yes.
A lot of our fear is due to confusion,
Yes.
lack of clarity. And so, to that analogy about being a thermostat,
Yes.
look, when you set, you are clear.
Yeah.
The room has to warm up or cool off depending on my setting.
Yeah.
You control the narrative. And when you walk in the room, You tell the people they need to adjust
You
accordingly.
gotta adjust accordingly if we're going to
That is it.
engage. Yes, yes. I love it. Okay, so our season six thing, our season six theme is community care is critical. So part of community care is being able to refill your own cup because you can't
Ooh.
pour from an empty cup. So what does self-care look like for you and how are you taking care of yourself these days? Everybody always laugh when I ask that question.
Really? It's
Everybody,
funny.
this is a moment we have.
Uh, one of the things, so one, I always have a lot of unpopular opinions,
Yeah.
right? And I always ruffle feathers. That's just me. That's just my nature. Self care, I actually had to redefine
Mm,
because for me personally, I know me. Self care registered in my brain as a luxury, it registered as a nice to have. And as a busy CEO, even when I scheduled it, I let it fall by the wayside,
yeah.
right? Full transparency. And it was like, okay, I'll get to it when I get to it. I actually had to shift from self care to essentials.
Mm,
This is a requirement in order for me to show up, in order for me to continue, in order for me to lead. So, self care, or this requirement for my success and the success of my family and the success of my teams who work at the firm, looks like scheduled time off. It looks like not working in the evenings. It looks like massages monthly. It looks like my nail appointments. It looks like reading. And but it's a requirement. So now it is on the calendar. It's not the self care. It is like it's my essentials for in order for to again keep this machine
yeah.
going. It also looks like time, that time with family. I love to travel. But I do have scheduled time of just days off. The other shift that I made as a CEO was that I schedule my when I'm doing my strategic planning for the year, I schedule my vacations first and everything else has to go around it.
Oh,
I
that's
no
nice.
longer fit my vacation in and try to find the days and schedule. No, these are blackout dates.
That's nice.
Everything else goes around my blackout dates.
That's
And
nice.
so it's that self-care becomes the reprioritization, right, of
Yeah.
my physical and mental well-being.
Yeah.
So,
And even, I can resonate with that because I feel like I do better with it in certain seasons. There's things
mhm.
that I've implemented for myself, like December, I take a whole sabbatical month in December.
Oh, I
And
love
and
that.
in times I kind of have graded myself on it because sometimes I give myself an A, and other times it's like, this was a C plus because I couldn't turn my mind off to fully rest, right? And
Yeah.
so, I always say, even this, we love to ask our guests about the self care because it's just a modeling opportunity that we all are still becoming. No one has arrived. It's not a shame point. It's what in this season I'm doing, what in this season is working,
And it
and it's going to
changes.
shift. Yeah, it's going to shift. Okay,
But I
final
love that
question.
December. I may have to take that
Yeah,
one from
yeah,
you. I
yeah,
may have to borrow that
yeah,
sabbatical and really just disconnect.
yeah. I
But
had
like
to
you said, I'm
tweak.
sure that's hard.
I had to tweak a little bit just because of some of the stuff with our just clients and how
Yeah.
our year ends. So now it's like
Mhm.
December 12th to January 12th. So I still get the month, but I
Yeah.
needed at least that 1 week to close out that week and a half to
Yeah.
close out
Yeah.
stuff so I could
Mhm.
really engage.
I love that.
And then I needed that beginning of the year to ramp up because I don't be ready. But people be I don't be ready to about February. My birthday is February 17th. That's literally like the beginning of the year. That first 6 weeks of the year, I just be a mess. I don't know what be happening. I don't know what day of the week it is. I just am a hot mess like the first 6 weeks of the year.
I'm
Like,
so glad to know it's not just me because I'm not answering emails until Martin Luther King.
exactly.
I can't get back in.
I'm
I'm
just
just
like,
like,
I
I
don't know
can't
what
tell you
day of the
that.
week it is. I'm just like out of it.
Literally, my brain will not turn on. Like I would look at an email, it will not register. I
Exactly.
have no idea. Like, I'll see y'all in a couple weeks
Like
because I need
I
that.
love that Martin Luther King Day is the brain turn back on day. Okay, I love it.
Literally.
That's so funny. Okay, last question on this. Um, what is your care superpower? So, what do you offer to your community that creates a
Mm.
soft space for them to land?
Mm. Um, my vulnerability is my
Mm,
superpower.
I love it.
My ability to expose my failures and my flaws and to let them know they're not in it alone always brings people to a safe space.
Yeah,
It took me a while to realize that because I oftentimes people come to me asking, have you ever experienced this? And they know they're going to get a truthful, honest answer.
yeah,
Because again, for me, my alignment is now me anticipating failures. I embrace failures. I look forward to them now, because it's a learning
yeah,
for me. And because my background lended myself to be such a planner and preventer, I used to plan so much that I prevented the mistakes, but
wow,
I wasn't growing.
wow,
So my failures, my ability to be vulnerable, my candor around my mistakes provides this safe space for people to share,
mm,
want to, really connect and, be relatable. Like we're all humans in this one big experiment called
yeah,
life,
yeah,
right? No matter who you are, what you've accomplished, any title, we are all on this journey. And so I take myself off the pedestal and be vulnerable. So
yeah. I love that. This has been so good. Thank you so much for
yeah,
sharing your wisdom and insights with our
I enjoy.
listeners and our community. Um, what do you have going on, and where can people connect with you beyond the podcast?
Yeah. Look, there's
Yes.
always something going on. So super excited. So one, you can connect with me on social, Shayla Atkins, Shayla N Atkins on LinkedIn. So I'll start there. My website is www.theatkinsimpact.com, where you can get to all things consulting, coaching, and speaking. I'm super excited. I'm working on my second book
Whoop, whoop.
that is coming up. So super excited. We're going to be sending out save the dates next year, Women's History Month, but it's going to be in the Lead with Spice franchise, which I'm super excited about. It's a collection of authors. It's a collection of powerhouse women. I shared my story and my insight, and it is now my turn to amplify the voices of others and to
Yeah.
catapult others. And so, I live by the mantra of we lift as we climb,
Yep.
and this is my way of doing this for this book. So more to come, events, you name it. So yes.
Yay. I love it. We'll put all the links in the show notes. You all make sure you're following and connecting with Shayla on all her platforms. And again, you'll be able to find all her links in the show notes. So this has been a really enlightening conversation. I've enjoyed it. Uh,
Oh, me too.
good
It's like
stuff.
just
Good
chatting.
stuff, right? If you're listening and you found this useful, please share with a friend. We are on all major podcast platforms. You can also listen from our website. Make sure you follow, like, rate, review, comment, all the things to help us amplify this work that we're doing. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Black Woman Leading, or visit our website at blackwomanleading.com. I am personally Laura E. Knights on all platforms, LinkedIn, Instagram. Would love to connect with you personally as well. And then finally, if you want to learn more about our work with organizations to help them create more conscious, competent, and confident leaders, you can check out our corporate site at knightsconsultinggroup.com. We love to connect with you in any of these ways. And until next time, be well.